Well, hello there. I'm Jen Jackson, mother of 11 beautiful children. While my life is filled with wonder and adventure, it can sometimes be laced with confusion and what feels like chaos. Can you relate? My goal is to point out that while motherhood may have its challenges at times, it can also be beautiful and marvelous. As a mother, you have a superpower that cannot be duplicated. You are the true Captain Marvel. Let's talk about it. Welcome to episode number 29 of Marvelous Motherhood with Mama Jen. Today I'll be talking about the challenges of homeschooling when it comes to support. Now, just as a caveat, I am a huge advocate for homeschooling. I truly, with all my heart, believe that parents are their children's best advocates and educators. You begin homeschooling your children from the time that they come out of the womb. You are teaching them human relations. You are teaching them the language that you speak. You are teaching them how to interact with others. You are teaching them emotional intelligence. And you are teaching them academic intelligence as you teach them their ABCs and how to write their name and how to count to 10 and what their colors are and how to put their shoes and clothes on properly, how to wash their hands and use the potty, how to walk and run and climb safely. You are already teaching your children so many things. And I believe it's just a natural transition to go into teaching our children academically. I know that in our culture and world, we have been taught that we have to pay certain quote-unquote experts to teach our children. But no one is an expert as much as that child's own mother and father. You know your children best. You know how they think and how they learn, and you are the best teacher for them. So I'm just going to say that for all of those who needed an extra boost of encouragement in their homeschool journey. For those of you who do not homeschool, this is in no way meant to cause any type of condemnation or shame. If you send your children to public, private, Christian school, Catholic school, wherever school you send your children, I'm sure that you sent them where you believed would be best for your children. And I throw no shade or shame on anyone. I'm not one of those people who say sending your children to public school is child abuse. I know that is a saying that people say. I don't happen to agree with that because you're not harming your child on purpose. You're doing what you believe is best for your child. If you are a believer, I encourage you, though, whether you send your children to public school, private school, Christian school, Catholic school, or you homeschool, I always say the best thing you can do for your child and the best gift you can give your child is to pray for them consistently. Pray for their academic health, their intelligence, their wisdom, their relationships with their family, with you, with their friends, with their siblings. Pray for their financial management, for their future spouses and their future children, their future careers. Pray for any and everything you can think of regarding your children at all times. No matter where they go to school, God Almighty is ultimately the one in control. So you need to appeal to Him for your child's well-being above anything else. Your method of educating your children is not a salvation issue. So teach your children to love the Lord their God with all their heart, soul, mind, and strength. Teach them to love their neighbors as themselves. Teach them to fear God and keep His commandments. This is the whole duty of man. So no matter what type of education you choose for your children, that is the main thing. Keep the main thing the main thing. And with all that being said, I want to jump into my topic for this particular episode of the podcast, which is dealing with challenges of homeschool when it comes to support. There are some people, mostly mothers, who really, really want to homeschool their children. And they are finding it hard to convince their husbands that this is the best course of action for their children. My advice to you is to do your research and write out all of the pros and cons when it comes to homeschooling. Think about how it's going to look in your household. Think about what your ultimate goal is in homeschooling. Write them down so you can be able to clearly communicate them to your spouse, the opposing spouse. It's easier to convince someone and persuade someone that something is a good idea if you present it in a way that shows you have done the research, you have done the work, you know what you're talking about, and you know how it will work. Sometimes people oppose things just because they don't understand it. They don't know what it's going to look like. They don't know what the benefits are. Many people often oppose or fear things that they just don't understand. So patiently, lovingly explain to them what homeschooling will look like. Let them know that you're not in a relationship to be bullied and bulldozed, that you want to have a conversation, not with them saying, no, we're not going to do it because I don't like it, but saying that, hey, we need to talk about this as two adults in a partnering relationship, not a domineering relationship. If you are perhaps the husband and you really, really want your wife to homeschool, but she's not comfortable with it, but you can't do the homeschooling because you're the breadwinner and you really want your wife to homeschool your children, my advice to you is to, again, do your research, see what it would look like, how it could look in your household, and ask and look up homeschooling conventions and other homeschooling co-ops and ask her to go with you to check out homeschooling and to meet other homeschooling families and mothers. It will not be helpful at all for you as the husband, the man of the house, to demand that your wife homeschools. It would not be helpful at all to shame her for not homeschooling or compare her to another wife or mother or woman who does. That will not be helpful. Mothers naturally have this thing that we call mom guilt. We're always trying to do what's best for our children and second guessing ourselves at every turn. It is not helpful at all for a husband to shame his wife for not doing something the way that he thinks it ought to be done, even if it's something as great as homeschooling. Sometimes the mom does not want to homeschool her children because she's not confident in herself and her abilities to do so. Putting her down and shaming her for not homeschooling and telling her how much is harming your children is not going to help with that feeling of guilt and shame. It will only solidify her suspicions that she's not good enough. Instead, find ways to affirm her. Point out all the ways that she has already been teaching your children and how they have benefited from it. Explain from your heart how much you really want your children to benefit from her wisdom and intelligence. And point out the good things about it. Another reason why some moms don't want to homeschool their children, besides just a lack of confidence in themselves, is a lack of outside support. So she's going to need an extra dose of support from you at home. For you to say, hey, since you're homeschooling, I want to help make meals every now and then. I want to help change diapers while you focus on our older children. I want to help wash the dishes in the evening so you can rest, because I understand that homeschooling can be emotionally and mentally draining and you just need a chance to sit still. Or when I come home, I want you to be able to go out for a walk and go to a park or go hang out with your girlfriends or whatever you need to do to decompress. If you want to support your wife because she's not getting outside support and people are being critical of her for homeschooling outside of your household and is making her lose her confidence, then you need to be that support and remind her that, hey, you and I are the ones raising these children. You and I are the ones being held accountable by God for how they are educated, how they are raised, and how they interact in the world. Nobody else's opinion matters. You have to show her that you're on her side. And the third reason, which I'm sure there are other personal nuanced reasons, but another major reason why many mothers don't want to homeschool, even if the fathers want the child to be homeschooled, is that she doesn't feel safe. She may not feel like it's safe for her to not work and homeschool her children. She may, and sometimes it's because of something that you as the husband did. Have you had a habit of making promises and not keeping those promises, and so she feel like you're unreliable? It'd be hard for her to homeschool her children if she feels like she doesn't have support at home. You may say, I give her support. I'm telling her to homeschool. But if you are showing a reputation of being unreliable, that doesn't feel like support. Verbally saying, do this, is not the same as support. Another reason is if the husband or father has been unfaithful in any way, whether he had an emotional affair or a full-blown physical affair. On the woman and the man, whoever's been cheated on, whether it's an emotional affair or a physical affair, the effect emotionally and psychologically is the same. It's the same pain and hurt. So if you have ever stepped out on the marriage, then if she has not fully rebuilt that trust, then that can be another reason why she doesn't want to homeschool, but rather try to work instead, and doesn't want to give up a career or a job or an income, because she may still feel like she doesn't know when she'll end up being a single mother again, and wants to be able to provide for her children, and that will feel more important than homeschooling them in her household. So those are some of the reasons why the wife would be opposed to homeschooling when the husband is saying, please homeschool our children. Whatever the reason is, have a true heart-to-heart. And I know that a lot of men don't like to have heart-to-hearts and long talks, but we're all adults here. Sometimes we have to be grown-ups and talk about things and get to the bottom of the problem. So talk to your wife and see what is her real, actual objection to homeschooling. But also remember that you as the husband, and even if your wife loves homeschooling and wants to homeschool, whether your wife wants to homeschool or doesn't want to homeschool, she needs your support. So as a husband, a great way to support your wife is to encourage her in her intelligence and her ability. Be louder in your affirmations than the people outside your household are with their condemnations. Other people outside the household will have their opinions, but if your wife doesn't have a thick enough skin to stand up for herself and remind people that, hey, you had a chance to raise your own children, I'm raising mine this way, then you need to be that support for her. Whether she enjoys homeschooling or not, stand up for her and remind her of her intelligence and your confidence in her to adequately, efficiently, and exceptionally homeschool your children. I'll briefly go into another objection of support when it comes to people on the outside, and I'll keep this one brief. Anyone outside of your household, this means not your spouse or your children, anyone outside your household, aunts, uncles, cousins, siblings, your mom and dad, your spouse's mom and dad, they do not get a say in whether or not your children are homeschooled. And I want to keep this particular portion brief because I don't think that they even deserve a long explanation of this. When you got married to your husband and wife, you two are responsible for your household and raising your children. It does take a village for sure to support and teach your children. But people outside your household do not get to tell you where your children go to school. So if you decide to send them to public school, then you do that. You pray for your children, you teach them the right things, and you send them. If you decide to homeschool, then you do that. You teach them good things, you show them examples, you teach them life lessons, you're educating them at home. But outside people do not get to demand and get a vote. Husband and wife will decide together because God chose that man and that woman to be the parents of those children, and they will be the ones held accountable for those children. And my last objection when it comes to homeschooling is not having the support of the actual children. Now, I will admit that I have met lots of homeschool families when I was a teenager and now as an adult, and I have never met a child who openly opposed homeschooling. And there has only been a handful a few mothers who have confided in me and told me that their teenage daughter or their teenage son asked about going to a public school. Most homeschoolers that I have met love the freedom of being homeschooled. Being able to, on a nice sunny day, go outside and play and not be stuck and confined to a building because the school district commanded the schools to keep them in the building, in the classroom, a certain amount of hours per day, per year. If it's a nice day, my children can go outside and play and enjoy themselves. They still are able to get their work done throughout the day. They're able to sit on a sofa with me and practice reading while cuddling with me. The little ones who are still learning how to read. The older ones are able to practice autonomy and responsibility by practicing time management to make sure they get their assignments done on time. They get to have jobs and be flexible with what time they go into work because they can get their work done another time. They don't have to worry about having to be in school a certain time and having limited hours that they're competing with other children who are getting out of school at that same time. There's just so much flexibility to be able to go on field trips as a family. For a child to say, hey, I've always wanted to visit this museum. Can we go there one day? And then we all just pick up and go there on a weekday, in the middle of the day, and not on a Saturday or Sunday when it's crowded from other weekend people. So most homeschoolers I know love being homeschooled. But with that being said, I for sure know that there are some times when your own child doesn't want to be homeschooled anymore. This is another occasion for conversation. This is not to say, hey, let's come to a compromise. I'll send you to another school, but we'll have to pick which one. No, if you as a parent, your husband and wife has decided, you as husband and wife has decided that your children will be educated at home. This is not a discussion of whether or not you'll be educated at home. This is a discussion of how can I help you to be content with this and appreciate it. You will let your child express to them what their concerns are or what their frustrations are, and you will discuss whether or not there's something that you as a parent have to change. Have you been impatient with your child and yelling at them during lessons? Have you been inconsistent with lessons and they never know what day they're going to do what, and they just need some more structure? Have they heard some things from other people about all the pros of going to a brick and mortar school, and you have to remind them of the cons? Whatever it is, have a conversation with your child and be honest. Let them know that you hear them and you understand them and you respect their concerns, but also let them know what your concerns are and the reason why you have made the choice you did. And at the end of the conversation, your child may say, hey, I see the point now. I see the benefits. I want to keep homeschooling, and everything will be done. The conversation was had. But maybe at the end of the conversation, your child still wants to go to a brick and mortar school. Please remember that as the parent, you still have the final say. Okay, the same way there are children wish they could eat ice cream and cake for every meal, but you say no because you know what's best for them. The same way your children may have some money saved up from allowances and birthday gifts and Christmas gifts from people, and they want to go spend it all on a $200 action figure that they saw a commercial for when they were playing the video game or watching TV. And you say no because you know what's best for them. Our children have all kinds of ideas of things that they want to do that we as parents have to say, no, you can't do that because of XYZ. This thing isn't safe. This would waste your resources. This would be careless and inconsiderate of someone else. We have to tell our children no and explain to them the reason why. And even if they don't agree, they still can't have cake and ice cream for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. Even if they don't agree, they still can't spend $200 of their saved money on one action figure that is cheaply made just because they saw a commercial for it and impulsively want to get it. Even if your children really, really want to, You still might say no to them going to a sleepover at a friend's house when you know that husband and wife are having marital problems and the husband has been abusive to that wife, but your children don't know. They have just been invited to this person's house, but you know what's best for your child and you say no. Your child doesn't have to understand why you said no. You can by all means explain to them why. But if they don't understand, or if they choose to stay upset about it, if they choose to be obstinate, you still have the final say because you are the parent and you are making the best choices for your children. And all of that applies to educating your children at home as well. If your child says, but I really, really want more friends, I really, really want to go to the school, I really, really want X, Y, Z. And most of the time they're getting their ideas from TV shows of what they think high school or a brick and mortar school would be like. But if you have decided that this is what's best for your family and what's best for your child, you can take the time and explain to them, but they do not have to agree for you to decide to keep them at home. So those are my observations and tips when it comes to objections to homeschooling. You may be a wife who wants to homeschool and your husband says no. You want to take the time to let him know why it's important. Do your research and show him what it will look like and what the benefits are. And you can even come to a compromise of saying, let us homeschool for this 1 year and then we'll see how it goes for the next year. If you're a husband and you want your wife to homeschool and she is opposed to it, get to the bottom of it to see what it is. Perhaps she lacks confidence. Perhaps she feels like she lacks support. Or perhaps she doesn't feel safe enough to stay home and be a stay-at-home mom and homeschool her children and thinks that she needs to get an income. And if that's the reason, talk to her about it, why it's important to you and what you're looking for and how it can look and that you will support her and be there for her. If you have people on the outside of your household who are not supportive, remember to gently remind them that you and your spouse are the ones responsible for the well-being, education, and raising of those children, and they don't get a say. But you will appreciate their support. And if it's the child who's against homeschooling and it's really important to you and your spouse to home educate your children, then you can feel free to explain to them the reason why you have made this choice. But you must also remember that as the parent, you get the final say. And your children don't always have to understand. We're constantly telling them what's important and what they can and can't do in order to keep them safe. And they don't always agree with us, but they still have to follow the instructions. So with all that being said, it may seem like, well, how is motherhood marvelous from this particular thing? You're talking about objections. Well, motherhood is marvelous because even when it comes to objections to homeschooling or anything else in our motherhood journey, we get to become stronger physically, mentally, emotionally, academically, even financially as we raise our children. The amount of wisdom that we gain by just having to help other human beings grow into adulthood is phenomenal. The kind of experiences that we get, the emotional intelligence that we gain, the wisdom and savvy that we get from being mothers is unmatched. Think about how many mothers you know who, when their children are outside of the home now and grown up, or when they unfortunately face being left by a spouse, how many mothers, think about these mothers that you know that have hit the ground running with amazing careers and businesses that they started. The mommy brain that we have, often moms make fun of mommy brain when they say they're pregnant and they forget about things or they can't think straight sometimes. That's normal fatigue and hormone changes. But the true mommy brain is amazing. Mothers' brains physically grow larger because of all of the information that we take in to teach and raise our children. We're taking in information about being better mothers, but we're also taking in information about how to relate to each and every one of our children. We're connecting dots when it comes to our spouses and each and every one of our children. We're constantly learning and growing, and it's the reason why so many mothers make the best business owners and entrepreneurs, because we can't help it. Our brains grow and adapt to the new relationships and dynamics that we're constantly evolving as we raise our children, and they go from infants to toddlers to children to small children to older children to teenagers to adults. All of that stuff literally makes us more intelligent. And caring and nursing and raising our children helps us to actually outlive our spouses just by being mothers. So what do you think, my fellow sister in motherhood? Leave a comment or send me an email, which is in the description. And have a marvelous day, mama. You've got this.